Well, meanwhile, the National Joint Operational and Intelligence Structure is warning people against violating the law ahead of the 2026 State of the Nation address tomorrow. In the build-up to the event, all NATO joint structures have been meeting to ensure a smooth running of the event. The security structure says law enforcement agencies have been mobilized to prevent any opportunistic crimes before, during and after the address.
There will be road closures that have already been communicated by the City of Cape Town. We urge those without valid accreditation to avoid the area around the City Hall, as any lawlessness, criminality or behavior that contravenes the law will be dealt with accordingly. No disruptions will be allowed and tolerated by law enforcement.
Well, let's talk more about the expectations from the 2026 State of the Nation address. We are joined by Saftu's General Secretary, Zwelinzima Vavi, and Denosa's Simon Hlungwani. He's the president there, and Dr. Thato Masekoa. He's the president, in fact, of the South African Union of Students. Rather, he's the spokesperson. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time tonight. Perhaps let me start with you, Dr. Masekoa. I mean, we have already seen some of the crises in some universities in the country with the registration and some students actually even battling to get accommodation. We've seen those scenes in Cape Town. I'm wondering, what are you expecting the president to tell you as the students about in his State of the Nation address?
No, thank you very too much, Malungelo, and thanks for the opportunity, and greetings to your viewers and to the fellow panelists. Tomorrow, as the Union of Students, what we are expecting from the president is to clearly speak about the funding of students in institutions of higher learning. I'll start with NSFAS. I'll be as short as possible. First, we'll start with NSFAS. We want an increased budget in NSFAS because almost every other thing has increased. The cost of living has increased, but the disbursement of allowance to students remain the same for as long as you can imagine. Subsequent to that, what we are looking at is that you would have seen the crisis in as far as accommodation is concerned. Yeah. And therefore, we require that in order to circumvent that, you would have seen students don't have accommodation. Some of them don't have accommodation. That is because campuses do not have accommodations to accommodate these students. That is to pump into public-private partnership. That is going to have a lot of accountability. But moreover, we're looking at the president to touch on the issue of infrastructure developments in campuses and more universities. Yeah. You would have seen that there's been a lot of increase of more students passing, but the space to accommodate them has been reduced. And that has resulted in most of our students remaining in locations and villages and smoking and doing all manner of wrong things because an idle mind is the devil's playground. Yeah. One of the things that we want to speak about is about youth unemployment and graduate absorption. Yeah. So when you look around youth unemployment and graduate absorption, we need to look into people finish their degrees, but they are not employed. But now we need to focus more on incubation hubs on campuses that are going to increase entrepreneurship. One thing that I've left out that speaks about enrollment is the issue around institutions like UNISA. So we need the president to instruct Department of Higher Education to have more campuses like UNISA, where more students can be enrolled. Yeah. This will also shorten the spaces that we find across students without spaces, and some of them going to institutions that are fly-by-nights. One of the most critical things that we want to hear the president speaking about that has been a rhetoric for years in as far as government is concerned is the removal of historic debts. Yeah. People have finished their degrees, but yet they cannot find jobs because their degrees are withheld by institutions and therefore they cannot work. And those are some of the things that we will be waiting for the president to hear him speaking about them sharply on, safety and security around campuses. He has declared a GBV as a national crisis.
Yeah.
Institutions of higher learning are suffering from GBV, from perpetrators, might be management, some of them landlords. So we need to find ways that is going to protect students from possible vulture and from these vultures that you find on campuses. Lastly is about the issue around mental health, on how to support students in institutions of higher learning around the issue of mental health, because mental health is a critical point for students in order for them to thrive in institutions of higher learning. But the most important thing is around funding, because the funding that is deprived in institutions of higher learning, you would have seen it is the major cause of instability around campuses, that you will see students being excluded financially. You would see students rioting because they don't have funding for accommodation. And those are some of the issues that we are anticipating that President Cyril tomorrow, when he addresses, he will specifically touch on them, so that as students, we know that he has got the best interest of students at heart.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. I'm going to come back to you, because there's something that I want to ask you about, the role, though, of the universities themselves, but also you did not touch on the issue of TVET colleges. I want to hear you talk on that. Mr. Vavi, you have been clear, over the years about how you want this government to really prioritize industrialization. Is that what you expect the president to speak about today, for his speech to be, worker-friendly, as you put it?
We are not interested in the ceremony of tomorrow. Tomorrow must be about accountability.
Right.
It must be about addressing squarely the crisis the South African working class is facing.
Yeah. Right.
Quadruple crisis of unemployment, which we now call an emergency.
Yeah.
A crisis of poverty, a crisis of inequality, corruption, and crime. We don't want just a mere acknowledgement that these are the areas of crisis for everybody in South Africa, but we want a report card.
Yeah.
A report card that will acknowledge and then tell us what action the government has taken and what it is going to do about these levels of mass unemployment, of collapsing infrastructure. Talking about infrastructure, Malungelo, Saftu condemns in the strongest terms the fact that so many parts of Johannesburg have now reached day zero in terms of water.
Yeah.
In any democracy, the president would have by now announced the dismissal of the Minister of Water, the Premier, the Mayor, and the Water Board. All of them do not deserve their jobs. No community in the context of these floods here in Gauteng in December and everywhere else in the country, but we still have a crisis of water in so many parts of Johannesburg and elsewhere in the country.
Mr. Vavi,
we expect him.
Mr. Vavi, sorry to interject. Are you then calling on the president to fire everyone who should have handled this issue of water here in Johannesburg, who should have addressed it?
Clearly, in his party, there ought to be accountability. This cannot be business as usual. The ANC cannot turn its name around to be absolutely no accountability, none whatsoever, no consequences. We're tired of these press conferences that are totally meaningless. Our call to the president: fire the minister, the premier, the mayor, the Rand Water Board, everybody in the chain of command must go. There can be no better signal of a president that has seen enough of a betraying of the people of South Africa by the people who he is commanding in the party. Yes, we are calling on the president to act, and to act now in terms of what we are saying. And then we're calling on him to do something about the collapsing municipalities to address the crisis of service delivery, the unaffordability of basic services,
Yeah.
water, electricity, municipal services are no longer affordable.
Yeah.
We're asking him to take visible steps to address the hunger, the malnutrition, the stunting of our children because they don't have access to food or they are food insecure. And if he was to give us a program that will say, amongst others, look, the policies we have been following for the past 31 years have dismally failed.
Yeah.
We need to change, and the only way to change is to ensure that we overhaul the structure of the economy and to make it based on meeting the most basic needs of our people for jobs, to address hunger, inequality. And of course, if you address those three,
Yeah.
the consequences will be that you address the levels of crime in South Africa that make us to be at war. We pick up 64 bodies
Yeah.
in South Africa every day. Our criminal justice system has all but collapsed, now responsible for only detecting and convicting about 11% of the people who commit murder. That's a total disaster in any democracy. Tomorrow, we expect no beautiful English. We want steps to be announced that the president is seeing what is unfolding in the country that he leads, and what is unfolding is a public crisis, is a
Yeah.
precipice.
Mr. Hlungwani, Mr. Vavi says tomorrow they don't want to hear beautiful English. I'm wondering, what is Denosa expecting to hear from the president tomorrow?
Well, thank you very much, and greetings to the fellow panelists and to the viewers all over. We are of the view that if the president is to present a view that can lift the aspirations of the people of and the society in general of the country,
Yeah.
he would have made a mark, which therefore does not require that he sticks to exactly as Mr. Vavi is saying, the Englishing and the wording, as well as the historically going back to where we started in 1994, because now our economy is crunching. The systems in the public systems are crunching and collapsing. If the president is to speak and appeal to everybody, he must be seen to be prioritizing dealing with crime, dealing with health, prioritizing education, as well as prioritizing the employment of public servants so that we can change things around. But including in that will be, how does he change the situation to the people of South Africa who are struggling with poverty, hunger, and starvation, and how will the economy grow? We are also going to, as it was said by the first speaker, that the issue of access to higher education has reached a boiling point. It's a crisis in our country. So we want to hear him saying something that will promise, but these promises will be meaningless if they will not be followed through by a delivery throughout. So he should be putting his own ministers to taps in a dashboard approach of monitoring the deliverables that he would have set as aspirations for the country this year. But it will be meaningless if nothing is achieved after he has spoken throughout. So the test is in the pudding, or the pudding is in the test itself. That which we must then see after his speeches tomorrow. Because other than that, it means a lot of children that we have who pass matric, they would need to go to higher education so that they don't become a burden for society and a burden for the state. But as it were, there's no access, enough access to higher education in the country. There's not enough TVET colleges. Even those who are accessing higher education, most of them It's not, in a lot of them, it's not even e-learning. Those who are given e-learning, there's no access to even e-learning itself, because you must enable children to be able to study if you say you provide them with e-learning, by way of giving them access to data, connectivity, and so on. So these are the challenges that overall, if the president can whip all his ministers to higher education, I want plans for this. To health, I want plans of how we are going to employ nurses and doctors.
Yeah.
And also the social standing of public sector workers. Workers are struggling, as it were. You currently have even increases that are so bad in the name of your gems, that which the public servants are struggling with and struggling to make ends meet. So we want the president to inspire all of us tomorrow. If he fails to do that, it means indeed we would have no hope in our country that anything will go better.
All right, gentlemen, please stand by. We're going to take a quick commercial break and we're back after this. Welcome back, and we continue our build-up to the State of the Nation address, and we continue with our discussion with Zwelinzima Vavi, who's Saftu Secretary, on their expectations, and we also got Dr. Thato Masekoa, who's the spokesperson of the Union of South African Students, and also Simon Hlungwani, who's the president of Denosa. Mr. Vavi, let me bring you in again, right? So it's all good and fair, one would say, for the president, right, to promise to fix A, B, and C, empower municipalities to be able to fix, infrastructure, provide water and electricity. But he's been criticized for actually not delivering.
The only thing you cannot fault the president on is presentation skills. Very convincing when he speaks, but we will be proven correct tomorrow that he will again be very thin on presenting a comprehensive, coordinated program.
Yeah.
to respond to the crisis that he will articulate again tomorrow. Like I was saying earlier,
Yeah.
we are tired of the empty rhetorics and promises and promises. We want to hear him saying the austerity programs we have been pursuing has resulted into fewer teachers in schools with no infrastructure, and that there's a crisis again in Gauteng. The scholar transport have not been paid. Kids are on the second week without going to school. And for that, he must announce yet again a dismissal of the MEC and the dismissal of the premier. How do you allow that to happen for 2 weeks in a country with such richness that is concentrated in few hands? Secondly, the austerity program, the budget cuts, have resulted in fewer nurses, doctors, and healthcare workers. We don't have specialists in the rural areas in the main. And that's why everybody is on a great track towards Johannesburg and Cape Town, Durban. Our systems cannot afford that. Our people need these services where they live, in the former Badustan areas, in the rural areas. We need more police in the streets. This has been promised over and over again, and our police needs infrastructure vans so that we can end the current situation where when you call a police station, when your house has been invaded by bandits, you are more likely to get an answer that the van has gone into the opposite direction. We want steps to address the deteriorating nature of our hospitals, the infrastructure that is not there, the rising levels of crime. So we don't want some beautiful words to say, yes, indeed, there's not enough nurses, police, and the army is falling apart, by the way. This is not being emphasized enough. Our borders have become such that anybody who's willing to break the law and walk into the country can do so. This government is allowing the minerals to have been looted and leave the borders, and the mines have left 6,000 unsealed mines all over the Republic. And that's why every former worker from Lesotho, Mozambique is back here, because there are possibilities and that it is allowing trade illicit activities. We're losing the British-American tobacco in Heidelberg. We are losing our minerals to trade. We are losing billions and billions to illicit cash outflows. There is no action. There is just no action on the part of the president to say, we're tired of crime. We're losing 35 to 40% of our procurement budget to corruption.
But Mr. Vavi, he has though spoken against crime. He has spoken against crime, saying that they will put more police on the ground. He has spoken about that.
And he did act. He did put 10,000. He did promise to put another 10,000. But that's not adequate. Previous national commissioners have said that South Africa, about 5-7 years ago, need to have an extra 60,000 more police officials to address the current levels of crime. We don't have enough. If you look at our comparing numbers to the rest of the world standards, we are way, way behind. And yet, our crime levels makes us to be a country at war with itself.
Okay.
This is totally not acceptable.
Okay, crime is an issue. We all agree, but I want to bring in Dr. Masekoa. Dr. Masekoa, I want to bring, I was hoping you were going to say something about the TVET colleges, because we know that these institutions are also not adequately funded. Do you expect him to say anything in that regard? But I also just want you to touch on what's the responsibility, though, of the universities, right, when it comes to ensuring that, you know, students have accommodation and that there's enough space to enroll these students? Because we can't all the time blame the government. We've got to be honest here.
Thank you very too much. I'll start with the role of universities first, and of course, I'll finish up with the issue around TVET colleges.
Please.
As an important discussion here. So the roles of universities, in as far as provision of spaces, in as far as how much they can absorb, largely depend on D-head, absorption space allocated per institution. So D-head has got targeted, rates that it gives to university each particular year.
Yeah.
So that is a role of governance. And that is why we say that we expect that the president instruct the Minister of Higher Education that, enrollment targets in institutions must increase.
Yeah.
And I want to agree further with what President Hlungwani was saying around issues of data access, because even though we will call for institutions like UNISA to accept more, or rather their space increment goes up, or institutions benchmark from what it does, it also becomes a problem because those students in particular will not thrive if the environment that they have, they don't have access to data and etc. And of course, in as far as accountability is concerned, you would realize that in the last SONA, the president spoke about a campus in Ikuruleni.
Yeah.
Today, there is nothing on that development in as far as issues of institutions of higher education is that. And that also, it puts a hindsight on whether there is an appreciation that, the youth of South Africa is hungry to learn, is hungry to be educated, but because of limited spaces that is directed by governance, then that on its own, limits. Then I'll go to TVET colleges in particular.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, you would have seen in the past trajectory when the current Minister of Higher Education, would tenuously be seen there in TVET colleges and etc. And of course, we have got our counterparts colleagues called Savetsa that are a union like us that equally represents, students from TVET colleges. But from our side, we would expect the president, of course, to in particular speak about the, development, in as far as campuses, more campuses in TVET colleges, and ensuring that, we've got more resource channeled to that.
Yeah.
Because when you realize about TVET colleges, they play a very critical role in technical traders, infrastructural developments, energy transition skills. They produce electrician, and of course, by and large, they are the ones that are bringing the youth unemployment gap.
Yeah.
Because they are the ones that, will be direct linked to sectors and industries, and they provide work-based training. So those are some of the things that we would, of course, expect from them. And of course, South Africa cannot solve unemployment without university driving innovation and TVETs, colleges driving industrial skills.
Yeah.
Both are pillars of reconstruction. And these are things we expect the president to speak about in order for us to know that the youth and the students of South Africa are taken into consideration and are seen as the future of this country. But on the hindsight is that the level of accountability that we are witnessing is very poor.
Yeah.
Because we expect him to tell us about the campus of Ikuruleni that he promised in the last SONA, on how far it is, on how far they've went around, policing and ensuring that, campuses are more safer. You would have heard there is a commission on Madlanga that speaks about, the dissolvement of PKTT on the other side. But ordinary citizens on the ground and students in particular are in danger.
Yeah.
It's only a problem because there was a dissolvement of, high-ranking political suicide killing, which of course is important. But I must emphasize that campuses are breeding crimes because, policing, maybe they're not reinforced. But of course, there's also a problem that I think we expect it to be spoken in particular around GBV across campuses in South Africa.
I want to bring in Mr. Hlungwani from Denosa. Right, the president can make whatever promise he wants to make, you know, when he addresses us tomorrow. But for him to implement that, he's going to need funds. Where must the money come from?
Well, thank you so much for that wonderful question. We collect revenue as a country using different streams. I can tell you that currently from our government, there are many people without necessarily targeting them who do not contribute to our taxation, although they are duty bound to contribute towards taxation. In that matter, I can just give you a few examples where government is not necessarily putting more stops into ensuring that they collect enough revenue. If you go to shops that are called your China malls, most of the Indian shops, I'm not targeting them specifically, but these people or that grouping, when you buy, you don't get a receipt most of the time. The only reason they don't do that is because they don't want to account how much they're making. There's a lot of money that is supposed to be accounted for and therefore in return account to taxation and the money that contributes toward that. As a nation, we cannot produce our young people and the country does not develop them so that in future they are well educated. And I think in education, when you educate people, you must produce well grounded organic intellectuals. So you must start by having enough access to higher education. For example, in the past, there would be talk of you're going to have a campus at Giyani, there's going to be a campus in Sukukune. We need in this SONA progress report to say how many intake has been started in there, because we know on the ground that there is nothing. Also, when they are doing that, they must make sure that the students that are being are taken into TVET colleges, universities, they have a safe accommodation. Because if they do not have a safe environment at which they are being trained, they would not become responsible citizens, because they will be produced as beta children or beta learners because the environment was not conducive and supportive towards them. So there are those areas that they must look into. But the fundamental point I wanted to make is that, you know, it is a case to be seeking healthcare in a rural area in this country. If you get diagnosed of cancer in Malamlele, you run the risk in Malamlele Hospital if you have a condition that relates to these serious terminal cases. You run the risk of dying before you even get an appointment in Mankweng Hospital, in Petersburg Hospital, for even treatment, or at some point it takes you more than 3 months to just get a diagnosis. It can't be that we have a country that is so unequal that it normalizes poor healthcare in rural area because there is no specialist, there is no resources, the referral system is just so dead such that people must just make means of the reality that they are there. But they must strengthen the revenue collection. So SARS must be funded enough when it comes to collection and let's say budgeting, must be funded enough to be able to have the capacity to collect more revenue that will then be in turn utilized.
All right, I think we
cover the budgetary pressure, not demand accountability from his cabinet.
All right, on that note, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Simon Hlungwani, he's Denosa president, and Dr. Thato Masekoa, he is the spokesperson of the South African Union of Students. And we also have Zwelinzima Vavi, he's the Saftu General Secretary, obviously telling us about what they expect to hear from the president when he delivers the State of the Nation address tomorrow night.